All right, so I think most Americans by this point are pretty well aware of how dysfunctional and unequal our economic structure here in the United States is. Even if you just take the pandemic as an example, we had, families who had never had to do such a thing lining up in food lines in order to feed their families. And at the same time, we had guys like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos adding tens of billions of dollars to their already ridiculous fortunes. And yet, somehow still, headlines like this somehow manage to surprise me. So super rich's wealth concentration surpasses Gilded Age levels. So yeah, we've gotten to this point. Worst inequality in our nation's history, essentially. So the wealth of the richest 0.00001% of the U.S. now exceeds that of the prior historical peak, which occurred during the Gilded Age, according to economist Gabriel Zuckman. In the late 19th century, the U.S. experienced rapid industrialization and economic growth, creating an inordinate amount of wealth for a handful of families. This era was also known for its severe inequality, and some have called that period, the period that began around 1990, a second Gilded Age. Back then, just 4 families represented the richest 0.00001%, and today's equivalent is 18 families. So he has a graph here. We're going to get back to that, but I just want to read a couple more details here. So Zuckman used real-time data from Forbes for the calculations. In 1913, at the end of the Gilded Age, the Rockefeller, Frick, Carnegie, and Baker families, names all tied to monopolistic power, held 0.85% of the country's total wealth. The richest 0.01%, around 18,000 U.S. families, have also surpassed the wealth levels reached in the Gilded Age. These families hold 10% of the country's wealth today, Zuckman wrote, and by comparison, in 1930s, the top 0.01% held 9% of U.S. wealth and a mere 2% in the late 1970s. So in other words, wealth is being shoveled upward at a rate that we cannot even imagine. And I have some data here from that Time article that you see up there that we're going to get into. But I mean, let's just look at this graph. I mean, it kind of gives away the story when you look at when this started to take off, right? Because who took office right around this time in the 1980s? Ronald Reagan, and he implemented the policies of Reaganomics, trickle-down economics, where the idea is you deregulate Wall Street, you deregulate the corporations, and then you allow them to continuously amass wealth and hope that somehow magically they're going to be generous and that money is going to trickle down to their workers. Has that actually happened? No, of course it hasn't. And in fact, it's not happened so much to the extent that this is where we're at right now in the opposite direction. The top 1% of Americans have taken $50 trillion from the bottom 90% since about the 1970s. So this is what the policies of trickle-down economics get you, okay? $50 trillion lifted off the backs of the bottom 90% in this country. And that's no small amount, okay? Even when it's stretched out over decades. I mean, we're talking about, as they point out in the Times article here, it works out to about $1,144 a month, every month, every single year for your average American that has been stolen from them, stolen directly from their pockets, from the top 1%, and from some of these families that even make up the 0.00001% are doing the same thing to an even greater extent. So listen, I mean, we know the answers to these problems, okay? This is the structure of our capitalist system as it continues to progress, especially as we've had, 5 Reagans in a row. We had Ronald Reagan, then we had Bill Clinton, then we had George Bush, then we had Obama, then we had Trump, and all of these presidents, I mean, you look within their individual presidencies, they were all serving the interests of these corporations. They were all serving the interests of the billionaire class, especially a guy like Ronald Reagan, but really all of them sort of followed with that same mindset. They followed with the same mindset of not being aggressive enough in tackling Wall Street, not being aggressive enough in taxing the billionaire class and reining in some of these institutions that are pulling this type of thing off. And meanwhile, we still have reports coming out like that ProPublica report that we covered about a week or two ago, where billionaires are not even paying their taxes, so they don't have to pay any income taxes. They're paying lower effective tax rates than your average working class American. So we're just in a situation that is totally untenable. And this report reminds me of another previous report that I saw that was from a while ago, but it was pointing out that the inequality, like this is comparing it to the Gilded Age, but inequality in the United States is worse than it was in revolutionary France when they rolled out the guillotines and did what they did back then. So I'm not going to say anything, I'm not trying to imply anything, but interpret that as you will. I mean, maybe it's time to get the pitchforks, but this is completely unsustainable. It's completely untenable. We have a situation where a handful of billionaires are, Jeff Bezos is on track to become a trillionaire by 2026 apparently, and your average Americans are still living paycheck to paycheck. An overwhelming majority of the country is living paycheck to paycheck, at the risk of bankruptcy with one random medical incident or something within their family. So we got to completely change course. This again is not only unsustainable, but even if you are a billionaire, even if you are a millionaire, a capitalist, and you favor this system, you need to understand that this is not sustainable, even for you guys. Okay, this is not sustainable for the billionaire class. So if I was them, I would start to be scared that these pitchforks are coming out sometime soon.